Ni hao. That was the first thing that I learned in my Chinese civilization class in spring of 2018. Ni hao means hello in Chinese. Um, but I took a class on Chinese civilization and I got to learn about their culture. And in the process, I was surrounded by many Chinese foreign exchange students in the class. And being immersed in that classroom dominated by all these, by this Chinese culture, really opened my eyes to their daily norms and by watching how they interacted with each other. So the most enriching culture experience that I've had lately was definitely spending that semester with those students. My name is Haley Marziewski, and today we're going to take a look at some of the Chinese students' norms and habits that I picked up on during my time in class studying their culture. So first, we're going to discuss some of the behaviors that I observed in the Chinese foreign exchange students. The first behavior that I noticed was on the very first day of class, we had the opportunity to pick our own seats. So I arrived to class like 5 minutes early, and usually there's plenty of seats left, like in the back. But something strange happened. I walked in, the Chinese exchange students had taken all the seats like in the very back of the class, and a lot of them had even like pulled their desks like farther back, like they moved their desk back to be farther away from the front. So I got a seat front and center that day. But I just thought that was weird because usually, I don't know. But the students also split up between like boys on one side and girls on the other side, which was like an interesting phenomenon to see like in a college classroom. So it also quickly became apparent that the Chinese students didn't really like the attention that came with public speaking or talking in front of the whole class. I noticed this during our introductions on our first couple days. The students would always try and like dodge their turn, or the teacher would call them out, and then when they like finally did have to go, they would be like really quiet and soft spoken, and they wouldn't really make a lot of eye contact with the rest of the class. And this wasn't really specific to the first day like jitters because it happened throughout the class every time we had a presentation. The last thing that I noticed about the Chinese students is how much pride they took in their appearance. They always were wearing, I would say it was like 50-50. Half of the class would be wearing luxury brand clothing from like Chinese luxury brands, and half the class would be wearing clothing from like American, like cool brands like Adidas, Nike, Calvin Klein, Michael Kors, and Burberry. But it was kind of weird because they didn't really dress according to the weather, like how we would like wear rain boots if it was gonna rain. They would just kind of wear like their best clothes all the time, which was interesting to see. But their clothes, when it wasn't just their clothes, it was also like designer handbags and backpacks and shoes and hats. But besides their clothes, their hair was always like really freshly cut. Like it was never overgrown. And like the girls' hair, when you get your hair cut, you know how there's just that straight edge on the bottom. That was always there, and a lot of them dyed their hair blonde. Um, Maybe it's just a personal preference, but it could also be westernization in action. But following these observations, let's look at how I interpreted these Chinese exchange students' norms and behaviors. So the seating arrangement on the first day was like, it was like weird to walk into at first, of course. But my first thought was that because the Chinese students chose to come all the way to SEMO to further their education, I would assume they'd be really driven and competitive to get the most out of their classes, which to me would mean sitting in the front row of their classes. Because in Western society, we're taught that like sitting in the front row and being close to the teacher is like a power move and where you're gonna like learn the most at. But the why that's not true is because when I like took a second look at it, it's not true because they probably sat farther away because they originate from a large power distance culture in China. So they felt more comfortable like farther away from the teacher, and in that because they felt more comfortable, they can probably learn better and stay focused more. So that was a big major difference in cultures that kind of took a second look at to finally understand. But the next thing is that the Chinese students were shyer than I imagined because, I mean, let's be honest, it takes like a lot of guts to move all the way from China to southeast Missouri just to go to school and further your education. So I thought that these people would have like confidence off the charts. But it turns out that it wasn't, that their lack of appreciation for public speaking wasn't due to shyness or like hatred or anything. It was probably because they had a language barrier and they didn't want to get up in front of the entire class and make a mistake. They're human, like everybody makes mistakes, and nobody wants to feel like the pain of making a mistake. So they probably just didn't want to get up in front of the class and lose face in front of the whole classroom. And also because in their original culture, like China, it's like very high context, and they might be like really expressive in like their word choice and their body movement. And they probably came to SEMO and saw that we are a very low context culture, and they might get self-conscious, like expressing themselves fully in front of other people. So the Chinese exchange students also put a different emphasis on appearance than girls in Cape Girardeau, well, girls and boys in Cape Girardeau do. They always looked presentable, and on the rare occasion that they wore sweats, they were really like designer and well-fitting. They weren't just like your baggy sweats that you threw on from Walmart. I feel like in their culture, they're very encouraged to put their best foot forward and avoid harsh judgment from others. But it could also be a sign of like showing that they're in a higher social class in China, because I mean, who doesn't want to appear as if they are more sophisticated or whatever than they actually are. So throughout the time I spent evaluating Chinese exchange students, I came to a few conclusions regarding them and their culture. Sharing my Chinese class with exchange students really gave me the opportunity to experience cultural differences in communication in real life. I got to experience the effect of a large power distance culture versus a small power distance culture, like ours. Ours is a small power distance culture. And then switching between a low context society and a high context society can be really nerve-wracking for students, because everything you ever learned and attributed to one culture and like how you even like greet somebody is suddenly changed. So that can be a real jarring effect on a lot of students. And then I also realized that westernization has a major effect like all around the world. Like our pop culture really spreads to every corner of the world, and people don't take it lightly. Like they really look into it and they study like what we're doing and they try to emulate it. So in conclusion, the seating arrangements differ between large and small power distance cultures because we attribute different spots to different meanings. Like in our society, we attribute the front to higher success in learning, but in their society, they consider the back as the best place to learn. Public speaking is a major challenge to overcome when there's a language barrier, because as humans, we don't want to fail and we don't want to look stupid in front of each other. So when you can't like perfectly speak the language, that's definitely going to knock your confidence level down a little bit. And then finally, the Western look has infected like every inch of the globe. Like girls are dyeing their hair blonde and they're like getting nose jobs to make their noses thinner. They're like plumping their lips up. But you really just can't, we can't escape the effects of westernization unless other cultures decide that our culture is not cool. Alright, thank you. That was my outline.